broadcast is back, baby.
They share this mogul orb. It's like it's just a sphere.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, like how this thing can fly. Wow. What you make of Bob Lazar?
I don't care about him. I'm all of the source I trust in the film say to not care about him, and he has nothing to show either way. So, if you can prove what you say, what's the point of talking?
So nothing that he says can be proven?
No.
No? Okay.
He hasn't been able to prove. He said that he had the fuel element 115. He never showed it for counter-examination. Never showed any proof of what he did. The only proof he had is that he worked for Los Alamos at one point for security check, if I remember well. But that's all.
So I recently rewatched the podcast between Bob Lazar and Joe Rogan. I think his story is that he was recreating, like he was trying to understand the technology from the craft and trying to recreate it. But he didn't make a lot of progress. But again, he has no proof, right? It's just a story.
Yeah,
it's just a story.
People need to realize that it's sadly, it has been a field where there was disinformation campaign that were being organized by intelligence service. So we know that because in 1971, the Australian intelligence service contracted one of its military advisors, William Turner, to understand what was happening with UFOs, because Australia is very linked to the US, but they were realizing at the time that they had a lot of witness reports that was very worrying for Australian defense. So they contracted William Turner to look into it, and he made a planetary level investigation of what was happening. And his final report is there is definite proof that the CIA convinced the Air Force to create a disinformation campaign toward the subjects to slow the research as most as possible.
Why?
So there is no good argument to talk about it if you think about it on the defense point of view. If you say you see them, it means that you have means of detections. So your opponents know that you have this means of detection. If you say you see them to your population, but you don't know what they are, your population says that you have a defense. If you don't know who they are, how can you defend from it? You can't. So that's why I think they know some things, but they don't know exactly what it is. Because they don't talk about it and they don't have a plan to talk about it. Because the whole population sees it. You have the last statistic was 10% of population sees the UFOs in their lifetime. So it's a very large amount of people inside the country that sees UFOs. So there is no real reason for intelligence or defense to talk about it until so much information leaks out that your opponents are perfectly aware of what you're working on, and they are starting to stop listening to you and working on it on their side. And we know that's what happened during the Cold War. During the Cold War, Russia realized, Soviet Russia, realized that the Americans were working on it and started working on it too, because they had their own reports. It's very funny because at the time, the UFO reports in the US blamed Soviet Russia for the sightings, and in Soviet Russia they blamed the American prototypes for the sighting. And when the Berlin Wall fell, they exchanged information and realized we saw the same thing, and it wasn't either of us. It was something else that was coming in. And that's why there is a realization at that time, 91, that there was something really, really big, and the secrecy they made to not make their own population think they were defenseless was actually preventing them on working on that type of technology. And that's why, since then, you have seen a big evolution of the subject with information leaking out, because China is becoming a technological powerhouse. It has the means of replicating such technologies, and it is very worrying for the US, because China plans to outrun the US by 2050. They want to have Taiwan by 2025. The US just retreated its Air Force from Taiwan, so it is very worrying for the US. And that's why you have military senior officials coming out in the US talking about it openly.
I see. So during the Cold War, the Foo Fighters, right? I think they were first called...
It was 42. It was way before. It was in World War II, the Foo Fighters. But
Okay.
Foo Fighters are just balls of light, so it's the same thing as what we would see today as plasma ball.
I see. Okay. So I'm not sure if you understand why it has been leaked. Those past years, like UFO informations have been leaked because they are afraid I'm not sure if I followed.
Yeah, the US fear to be outrun by China.
Okay.
Currently, they have some materials. We know about it because they talk about it in Project Science since in 49. They said that they recovered debris and sent the debris to private labs for investigation. So since 49, they've been working on it. And it's official documentation. It's not conspiracy theory. It's a memorandum to the press from the Air Material Command in 49. So we know they've been working on it, but if they have something, it's not something that is sufficient enough to ensure them supremacy if it became a real war with China. So they will need the very strong private technological companies of the United States. The problem is that in the last decades, you had another classification of information. So that information is hidden administratively. So very few people have access to it, and it is forbidden to even talk about it outside this secret access project. So what you are seeing right now is governmental officials, defense officials, saying there is too much classification. We can't show that type of technology we have recovered to the people that could work on it to create the technology we need right now. We need to speak openly about it, break the silence about it, just to keep the US safe and have our own private technologies working on a type of retro-engineering of the crafts we recovered.
I see. I now understand. Makes sense. I think in Papua New Guinea, some place like that, there's this island where this tribe lives there for thousands of years, uncontacted. And because they haven't been contacted, they never had the chance to evolve and exchange information. So without the exchange of informations, things don't advance, basically. You need to leak it. You need to make it, people talk about it and see where it goes. I see. It makes sense. Yeah. So let's assume, let's imagine that, for example, the US, they managed, they figured it out. They now know how to build a UFO. Do you think they would just try to take over the world and try to be the you know what I'm talking about? Just
yes.
Do you think they would do that?
So that's what is called the imperialist point of view. It was created by the Roman Empire. What they made, and it was particularly the baseline of the United States, is to create the Pax Romana. So what the Roman Empire was based on was commerce. So you need trade between different parts of your country. So you have some parts of your empire that are producing oranges, some parts of your empire that are producing iron. You exchange the two because there is no oranges where there is iron, and there is no iron where there is oranges. And you create trade by that way, and you create commerce, and you create the heartbeat of your empire. That's practically the idea. To do that, you need to conquer countries to create your own empire. What the Romans did was to launch their army and make a deal with the population. Okay, so either we do war or we do commerce. You choose. And that was pretty much what the US did for the last 70 years. When they started to feel that they were rivaled in the Cold War, when the Eastern Bloc with the Soviet Russia tried to conquer Southeast Asia, they felt that it was a threat for their heartbeat of commerce, of trade. And they created the Vietnam War, which is a very dark history on the start of the Vietnam War, because it was created, the incident of Tonkin was created by America's intelligence services to put America inside the war in Vietnam. So people can look at it on Wikipedia. It has been unclassified in the years 2000. But it's a really dark history. So that's the way US is reacting towards the rest of the world. And then you need to understand that even inside the US, there is two different paths that are opposing each other. You have the Republicans that want to restrict the US to the US, close the borders, etc. And then you have the Democrats that want to make the US the police world. They are the world police, sorry. And they are here to protect all American assets everywhere on Earth. The problem is that American assets, you can perfectly well say that an oil well inside the Middle East is an American asset because you need oil for your industry. So that's how they legitimate aggressions towards countries. So we are not in front of a simple situation. It's a very complex situation. And I think they fear to be outrun by Russia and China, and that will push them towards researching these technologies, what they call breakthrough technologies, a technology that allows us to completely make any opponent technology obsolete.
Wow. Either we do commerce or we do war. That's makes a lot of sense. And at the top of all of that, we have President Joe Biden. Oh man,
That ran from stage when he was asked about UFOs.
was he asked?
Oh, yes. When Barack Obama, it was 1 or 2 years ago, Barack Obama gave an interview and he was asked about UFOs and he said, yes, we detect very advanced crafts in our airspace. We don't know what they are. It's really worrying. We don't know really what to do. The week later, President Biden had a conference with presidents of South Korea, if I remember well, and a reporter asked him, Barack Obama just said that and you worked with him for 4 years. What do you think of it? And Biden answers back, asking the question again. And then you see him literally running off stage and the South Korea representative staying at the desk because he didn't understand that he's finished. And so you see Biden gesturing the South Korea representative to come out of stage because he just ran out of stage. So that's the level of Biden on the question.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Even if they're, it's so weird. They're leaking stuff, but they're not willing to openly talk about it.
You need to be aware that there is several factions currently at war inside the United States military and intelligence service. So it's really, really hard for them to overcome the resistance that there is to that subject. There is a whole part that is very anomalous for us in France because we kicked out religion in our state completely. But in the US, religion is a major ethics way of considering things. So if you go back in 52, one of the really troubling reports we have was a meeting between the different parts of the US military and US intelligence that were looking into UFOs. And 52 is the year that where you have flying saucers literally going above the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C. They are intercepted by jet fighters that shoot at them. Debris fall from the craft. They are recovered and then taken back by Wilbur Smith, Canadian technologist, and then sent to the Battle Institute that will do reverse engineering from the elements. That Battle Institute is still a very large research on metallurgy institute. And one of the reports of the Battle Institute is also to slow down as much as possible any effort to talk about openly of the subject because they are still researching the materials that have been recovered and they haven't reached the conclusion of the analysis. And one of the meetings following that 52 event over Washington, D.C. is a meeting where they refer to the Bible to explain UFOs. And in the Bible, they talk about demons trying to make them pass as gods. And they think UFOs are demons. It's perfectly strange for us, but that was their idea at the time. So it explains why you have also so much silence on the military side, because the Air Force was in charge of the UFO investigation under Project Blue Book, and was really leaning towards religion at the point. In front of the main training grounds of the Air Force, you have one of the largest churches in the United States, literally in front, to explain that link between the two. And that's why you still have a group that is refusing to talk about it openly, because they fear it will create some kind of end of the world. It seems very strange saying that out loud, but it's the United States, it's their culture that way.
I see how they could think that, but I doubt it. I mean, so many things changed in 70 years. We have so many more, sci-fi movies. People play video games. It's a completely new world. I think people would accept it. It was just say, okay, they're UFOs, great, they're agents. That's cool. Our neighbors.
Exactly. What is happening right now is that part of very influential people in the US is just starting to die of old age, to be honest. So they are stopping resistance because they are just dead of old age. So that's why you see more and more information leaking out.
Okay, so the whole generation has to die so people can start talking about it.
Yeah.
Man, those things take time.
Yeah.
Would you
realize that on another point, Biden still hasn't unclassified all documents regarding the JFK assassination. So there is a whole secrecy inside the US way of dealing with things that is very strange to us.
Yeah, they hide a lot of stuff. Watch full episodes of the Brewcast on the main YouTube channel, youtube.com/@brewfrasca.